The sea shall not have them, Act I. Autumn 1944. The English Channel. Cold, grey, merciless. The water temperature hovers around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to kill a man in hours, sometimes minutes if the shock doesn't take him first. The Channel has claimed thousands during this war, British and German alike, swallowed by waves and forgotten by history. It's not a battlefield in the traditional sense. No trenches, no fortifications, no ground to hold. Just endless water, indifferent to flags and uniforms, claiming lives without prejudice. September 23, 1944. A Royal Air Force bomber returns from a night raid over occupied France. The aircraft is a Vickers Wellington, twin-engine, fabric-covered, obsolete by 1944 standards but still flying missions because the RAF needs every available plane. The crew consists of 5 men. Pilot, navigator, bomb aimer, wireless operator, rear gunner. They're exhausted, having spent 6 hours in freezing darkness, dodging flak, dropping bombs on German supply lines, fighting their way home through clouds and confusion. The pilot is Flight Lieutenant James Harrington, 23 years old, from Manchester. He's flown 42 missions, survived encounters with night fighters, brought damaged aircraft home through storms and mechanical failures. He's experienced, capable, respected by his crew. But experience doesn't protect against random mechanical failure, against the thousand small things that can go wrong in aircraft pushed beyond their design limits. 50 miles from the English coast, the port engine fails. No warning, no gradual loss of power. Just sudden silence, the propeller windmilling uselessly, oil pressure dropping to 0. Harrington throttles back the starboard engine, tries to maintain altitude on one engine, but the Wellington is heavy, fuel-loaded from the return flight, struggling to stay airborne. The crew goes through emergency procedures, practiced countless times in training but never quite the same when it's real, when failure means death. The navigator, Sergeant Peter Walsh, plots their position, calculates distance to shore. The wireless operator, Sergeant David Chen, transmits Mayday signals, broadcasts their location, calls for assistance. The bomb aimer and rear gunner prepare for ditching, securing loose equipment, bracing themselves for impact. Harrington fights the controls, trying to coax maximum performance from the remaining engine, but physics is unforgiving. The aircraft descends steadily, inevitably, toward the dark water below. He considers ordering the crew to bail out, to parachute while there's still altitude, but that's a death sentence in the Channel. Parachuting into water at night, in full flight gear, weighted with equipment, the survival rate is essentially 0. At least if they ditch together, they have the emergency dinghy, a chance of rescue. 2,000 feet. 1,000 feet. 500 feet. The altimeter unwinds relentlessly. Harrington levels off as much as possible, reduces speed, prepares for the hardest landing of his life. He's practiced ditching procedures in training, performed them in simulators, read reports from survivors. Nose up, tail low, minimum speed, land parallel to the waves, not into them. Theory is simple. Execution in darkness, in heavy seas, in a failing aircraft, that's something else entirely. The Wellington hits the water. The impact is violent, catastrophic. The fabric-covered fuselage crumples on contact. Water floods through tears in the structure. The aircraft breaks apart, sections separating, sinking immediately. Harrington is thrown forward against the control column, his head striking metal, vision exploding into stars and darkness. He tastes blood, feels cold water rushing around his legs, his waist, his chest. Training takes over, automatic responses drilled into muscle memory. Release harness, find exit, get out before the aircraft drags you under. He fumbles with the release mechanism, fingers numb from cold and shock. The buckle comes free. He pushes away from the pilot's seat, finds the emergency exit above him, forces it open against water pressure. The dinghy, he needs the dinghy, they can't survive without it. He grabs the dinghy pack, yellow rubber container attached to the aircraft's interior, pulls the release handle. The CO2 canister fires, inflating the dinghy automatically. It expands rapidly, forcing its way through the exit, pulling Harrington with it. He breaks surface, gasping, choking on salt water, his lungs burning. Around him, the channel is chaos. Waves crashing, wind howling, debris floating everywhere. The Wellington has already sunk, disappeared beneath the surface, leaving only floating wreckage. Harrington hauls himself partially into the dinghy, exhausted, his flight suit waterlogged, weighing him down. He looks around desperately, searching for his crew. He sees a head bobbing in the water 20 yards away, then another. He calls out, his voice barely audible over wind and waves. Someone calls back. He paddles frantically toward the sound, using his hands, fighting current and wind. Walsh reaches the dinghy first, helped aboard by Harrington. Then Chen, half-conscious, swallowing water, pulled from the sea and collapsed into the bottom of the dinghy. The bomb aimer, Sergeant Thomas Reed, appears from behind a floating section of wing, swimming strongly despite his heavy gear. He climbs aboard, breathing hard, his face pale with shock and cold. 4 men. Where's the 5th? The rear gunner, Sergeant Michael Foster, youngest of the crew, 19 years old, on his 8th mission. They call his name, scan the water, search the debris field. Nothing. Minutes pass. The dinghy drifts further from the crash site. The chances of finding Foster alive diminish with every second. Hypothermia sets in quickly in channel water. Even strong swimmers don't last long. Walsh spots something, a patch of yellow in the gray water. Foster's May West life vest. They paddle toward it, find Foster floating face down, unconscious, his body limp. They drag him into the dinghy, turn him over, check for breathing. He's alive but barely, his lips blue, his skin gray, his body temperature dangerously low. Chen, who has some medical training, begins first aid, checking airways, trying to warm Foster with their own body heat. They strip off his wet flight jacket, wrap him in the emergency blanket from the survival kit, huddle around him. Now they assess their situation. 5 men in a small rubber dinghy, 50 miles from shore, in rough seas, in autumn weather. The dinghy is designed for 4 people maximum, cramped with 5. They have minimal supplies. The survival kit contains flares, a hand pump, fishing line, water purification tablets, emergency rations, a first aid kit. Enough for perhaps 3 days if carefully rationed. But rescue could take longer. Or might never come. Chen's radio was lost during ditching. They have no way to transmit their location. The Mayday signal went out before they hit the water, gave approximate coordinates, but the channel is vast. Finding a small dinghy in these conditions is nearly impossible. They have flares, but flares are only useful if someone is close enough to see them. At night, in this weather, visibility is measured in yards, not miles. Harrington takes charge, his training and rank making him natural leader. First priority is survival. Stay warm, stay hydrated, conserve energy. The dinghy has a small canvas cover they erect for wind protection. They huddle together for warmth, taking turns bailing water that sloshes over the sides in rough seas. They ration the emergency supplies, 1 small chocolate bar divided 5 ways, tiny sips of water from the canteen. Dawn comes slowly, gray light gradually replacing darkness, revealing their situation in harsh detail. The channel stretches endlessly in all directions, empty of ships, empty of land, empty of hope. The weather is worsening, wind increasing, waves growing larger. The dinghy rides up and down swells, rising 10 feet, dropping 10 feet, a sickening roller coaster motion that leaves them dizzy and nauseous. Foster remains unconscious, his breathing shallow, his pulse weak. Chen does everything possible with limited resources, but hypothermia has taken hold. Without proper medical care, without warmth, without rescue, Foster will die. They all will die, just more slowly. The channel shows no mercy. It never has. Harrington refuses to accept death. Not after surviving the ditching, not after getting his crew into the dinghy. They've beaten impossible odds already. They'll beat them again. He establishes routines, keeps the men occupied, prevents despair from taking hold. They take turns on lookout, scanning horizon for ships or aircraft. They bail water continuously, preventing the dinghy from being swamped. They check equipment, inventory supplies, maintain the small rituals that give structure to chaos. Hours pass. Nothing changes. The sea remains empty. The sky remains gray. The cold seeps deeper into their bodies despite their efforts to stay warm. They're all showing signs of hypothermia now, shivering violently, their speech slurred, their thoughts confused. The human body can only endure so much before it begins shutting down, prioritizing core functions, sacrificing extremities for survival of vital organs. Walsh, the navigator, tries to calculate their drift. Without instruments, without visible landmarks, it's guesswork at best. The current moves northeast, he thinks, pushed by prevailing winds. They might be drifting toward the Belgian coast, or parallel to it, or back toward France. The channel's currents are treacherous, unpredictable, capable of moving small boats dozens of miles in unexpected directions. They could drift for days, never approaching land, circling endlessly until the sea claims them. Night falls again. Their second night in the dinghy. 24 hours since ditching. Foster hasn't regained consciousness. The others are weakening, hypothermia advancing, their bodies losing the battle against cold and exposure. They huddle closer, sharing diminishing body heat, too tired to bail effectively, the dinghy riding lower in the water as it slowly fills. Harrington makes a decision. At first light, if no rescue appears, they'll fire a flare. It's a gamble. They have only 3 flares. Using one reduces their chances if rescue doesn't come immediately. But waiting too long, conserving flares until they're too weak to fire them, that's equally fatal. Better to use resources while they still can, while someone might see, while they're still capable of being saved. Dawn of the second day brings worse weather. Rain begins, cold autumn rain that soaks through their already wet clothing, that fills the dinghy faster than they can bail. Visibility drops to almost nothing. Wind drives spray into their faces, making breathing difficult. The dinghy wallows in heavy seas, waves breaking over the sides, threatening to capsize them. This is it, Harrington decides. Fire the flare now or never get another chance. He retrieves the flare pistol from the survival kit, loads it with numb fingers, aims skyward, fires. The flare arcs upward, bursts into brilliant red light, hangs suspended for long seconds, impossibly bright against gray sky. It's beautiful and desperate, a signal shouting we are here, we need help, please see us. The flare burns out, falls into the sea, disappears. Silence returns, just wind and waves and the hopeless emptiness of the channel. No response. No aircraft appearing from the clouds. No ship changing course toward them. Nothing. Just 5 men dying slowly in a rubber dinghy, their last hope literally falling into the sea. But 60 miles away, at RAF Coastal Command base in Dover, someone did see. A radar operator, Corporal Sarah Matthews, monitoring her scope during routine shift, noted an anomaly. A brief signal, faint, at extreme range. Could be debris, could be atmospheric interference, could be German E-boat. Or could be survivors. She marks the coordinates, reports it to the duty officer. The duty officer is Squadron Leader Thomas Harper, 42 years old, veteran of countless air-sea rescue operations. He's brought home dozens of downed airmen, pulled men from the channel when everyone else had given up. He knows the statistics, knows the odds, knows that most downed crews are never found. But he also knows that every life saved justifies 100 failed searches. He reviews Matthews' report, checks the coordinates against the previous night's Mayday signal. It's not exact, but it's close enough. Within the drift radius. Could be them. Harper makes his decision. Launch rescue. He orders an air-sea rescue launch to prepare for immediate departure, scrambles a search aircraft to guide them, mobilizes the resources of Coastal Command for another attempt to cheat the channel of its victims. It's probably futile. The weather is terrible, visibility nearly zero, the target area vast. But probably futile is better than certainly dead. They have to try. That's what Coastal Command does. That's why they exist. The ASR launch is a Fairmile motor launch, 60 feet of wood and steel, powered by twin diesel engines, designed specifically for channel rescue operations. The crew consists of 8 men, led by Lieutenant James Crawford. They know the mission is dangerous, that channel weather in autumn can sink rescue boats as easily as it sinks aircraft. But they don't hesitate. Somewhere out there, British airmen are dying. That's enough. The launch heads out into rough seas, guided by radio coordinates from Matthew's radar contact, searching for 5 men in a rubber dinghy somewhere in endless grey water. Back in the dinghy, Harrington and his crew have given up hope. The flare brought no response. Their second night approaches. They're too weak now to bail effectively, the dinghy riding dangerously low, waves washing completely over them. Foster is still unconscious, his pulse barely detectable. The others drift in and out of awareness, hypothermia shutting down their minds, cold and exhaustion overwhelming their will to survive. Harrington thinks about his family, about his wife Elizabeth waiting in Manchester, about his 3-year-old daughter who calls him daddy and won't remember him when she grows up. He thinks about the 42 missions he survived, the friends he lost, the men he brought home. He thinks about dying here, 50 miles from England, so close to home but impossibly far. The Channel will have him after all. Just another name on the list of men who fell from the sky and disappeared into the sea. But he doesn't see the Fairmile launch, doesn't hear its engines over wind and waves, doesn't know that Crawford has been searching for 4 hours, quartering the search area methodically, refusing to quit despite worsening weather and approaching darkness. He doesn't know that Matthews kept watching her scope, kept tracking the drift, kept updating coordinates even though her shift ended hours ago. He doesn't know that Harper is in the command center, coordinating the search, calling in additional resources, determined that this crew will not be abandoned. Crawford's lookout spots something. A splash of yellow against gray water. He alters course, approaches cautiously, sees the dinghy, sees the men inside barely moving. He brings the Fairmile alongside, fighting the sea, keeping his boat steady while crew members reach down, grab the dinghy, secure it, begin lifting the survivors aboard. 5 men are pulled from the channel. 5 men who were minutes from death, whose strength had failed, whose hope had died, who had accepted their fate. 5 men who couldn't have survived another hour, who would have slipped beneath the waves before nightfall. 5 men who are now wrapped in blankets, given hot tea, treated for hypothermia, heading toward shore and life and future. Harrington regains consciousness on the Fairmile's deck, wrapped in wool blankets, crew members rubbing his limbs to restore circulation. He tries to speak, asks about his men. All aboard, he's told. All alive. Even Foster, barely, but still breathing, his heart still beating. They made it. Impossible odds, cruel sea, desperate situation. But they made it. The Channel didn't claim them after all. The Fairmile returns to Dover. Ambulances wait at the dock. The survivors are rushed to hospital, treated for hypothermia, exhaustion, exposure. Foster spends a week in critical condition before stabilizing. The others recover more quickly, their youth and prior health pulling them through. Within 2 weeks, all 5 are discharged from hospital, declared fit for light duty. Harper visits them before they return to their squadrons. He wants to meet the men he helped save, wants to confirm that the effort was worth it, that lives were preserved, that the Channel was cheated of 5 more victims. He finds them in the recovery ward, sitting together, talking quietly, processing their experience. They thank him, express gratitude that feels inadequate for saving their lives. Harper waves it off. Just doing the job, he says. That's what Coastal Command does. But privately, he feels the satisfaction of success, the knowledge that this time, this operation, his people made a difference. 5 men who should be dead are alive. That's worth every hour of searching, every risk taken, every resource expended. Harrington asks about Matthews, the radar operator who spotted their flare. Harper smiles. She's being recommended for commendation, he says. She stayed on duty 4 hours past her shift, kept tracking coordinates, kept updating the search area. Without her persistence, the Fairmile would have searched the wrong sector, would have missed the dinghy entirely. Matthews saw a faint signal at extreme range and refused to dismiss it. That decision saved 5 lives. The crew recovers, returns to operations, flies again. The Wellington they lost is replaced, written off as operational loss, just another aircraft among thousands lost during the war. But the men survive, their war continues, and eventually, they go home. Harrington completes his tour, returns to Manchester, to Elizabeth and their daughter, to civilian life and the strange peace of survival. Walsh, Chen, Reed, Foster, they all survive the war, all return home, all live long lives that wouldn't have existed without Coastal Command's determination that the sea shall not have them. This is the reality of air-sea rescue during World War II. Not glamorous, not celebrated, not the kind of heroism that makes headlines. Just skilled, determined people doing impossible jobs, searching endless ocean for tiny targets, refusing to abandon downed crews, fighting the sea's terrible mathematics. Most searches failed. Most downed crews were never found. But some were. 5 here, 3 there, 2 somewhere else. Each success justified hundreds of failures, because each life saved was infinite value to the person living it. The Channel claimed thousands during the war. But it didn't claim everyone. Sometimes, with skill and courage and impossible determination, men pulled other men from the sea and brought them home. That's why Coastal Command existed. That's what they did. The sea shall not have them. Not if human will has anything to say about it. The sea shall not have them, Act 2. November 1944. RAF Coastal Command Headquarters, Dover. Squadron Leader Thomas Harper sits at his desk, reviewing operational reports from the previous month. The numbers are sobering, brutal in their mathematical precision. 47 aircraft lost over the Channel during October. 231 airmen aboard those aircraft. 68 rescued. 163 missing, presumed dead. The presumption is accurate. Men don't survive long in Channel waters. If they're not found within hours, they're not found at all. Harper has been running air-sea rescue operations for 18 months now, long enough to understand the mathematics of survival, the cold equations that govern life and death at sea. Every search is a race against time, against cold, against the Channel's infinite capacity to hide small boats in vast waters. Some races they win. Most they lose. But they keep running them, keep searching, keep refusing to abandon downed crews, because the alternative is unacceptable. The telephone rings. Operations room, urgent call. Harper picks up, listens, his expression hardening. Another aircraft down, a Lancaster bomber returning from raid over Germany, engine failure, ditched approximately 40 miles northeast of Dover. 7 crew aboard. Mayday signal received, approximate coordinates recorded. Weather conditions deteriorating, heavy seas, visibility poor. Standard Channel nightmare. Harper mobilizes resources immediately. He's done this dozens of times, developed procedures, refined responses, built a system designed to maximize rescue chances despite terrible odds. First, launch the Fairmile boats, get them moving toward last known position. Second, scramble search aircraft, Hudsons and Wellingtons equipped with radar and spotting equipment, send them to overfly the search area. Third, alert nearby naval vessels, request assistance, coordinate multi-platform search operation. The operations room transforms into controlled chaos. Officers plot coordinates on large wall maps, calculate drift rates based on wind and current, define search sectors, assign resources. Radio operators transmit orders, receive status updates, maintain communication with search units. The machinery of rescue spins into motion, dozens of people working synchronized to save 7 men they've never met, who might already be dead, who probably won't be found even if alive. Lieutenant Crawford receives the order aboard his Fairmile, currently on patrol 15 miles off Dover. He alters course immediately, pushes the throttles forward, speeds toward the search area. His crew prepares rescue equipment, readies medical supplies, scans the horizon through binoculars. They're experienced now, veterans of multiple rescues, familiar with the patterns of success and failure. They know what to look for. Yellow dinghies, floating debris, Mae West life vests, oil slicks, anything that might indicate survivors. The search aircraft arrives first, a Hudson bomber converted for maritime patrol. The pilot, Flight Lieutenant David Morrison, flies at low altitude, below the cloud deck, searching systematically through rain and poor visibility. His radar operator scans the scope, looking for surface contacts, anything that might be survivors. But radar can't distinguish small dinghies from floating debris, from waves, from the 1,000 false contacts that clutter coastal waters. Visual identification is necessary, which means flying low, slow, dangerous in this weather. Morrison quarters the search area methodically, flying grid patterns, covering every sector systematically. His crew maintains focus despite fatigue, despite the monotony of staring at gray water hour after hour. This is the reality of air-sea rescue. Endless searching, minimal results, occasional miraculous success that justifies all the failures. They've found survivors before, pulled off rescues that seemed impossible. They'll keep searching until fuel runs low or darkness makes continuation futile. Channel is vast, visibility is terrible, and 7 men in a rubber dinghy are impossibly small targets in endless gray ocean. The mathematics are against them. Statistics say these men are already dead. But statistics don't account for human determination, for the refusal to accept loss, for the stubborn insistence that every life matters. Back in Dover, Harper monitors progress, coordinates additional resources. He requests support from naval patrol vessels, from other air-sea rescue units, from anyone who can contribute. The search expands, more boats, more aircraft, more eyes scanning water. It's expensive in terms of resources, in terms of fuel and time and personnel. War planners question the expenditure, suggest that rescue operations divert resources from primary military objectives. Harper ignores them. Coastal Command's mission is rescue. That's what they do. The cost is justified by every life saved, by every airman returned to service, by the knowledge that crews flying dangerous missions have people searching for them if they go down. The Lancaster crew, if they survive ditching, are experiencing their own private hell. The bomber hit water hard, broke apart on impact, sank within seconds. The crew had minimal time to escape, to grab the emergency dinghy, to get clear before the aircraft dragged them under. Some made it. Some didn't. The survivors, hypothermic and shocked, huddle in the dinghy, watching their crewmates disappear into the channel, unable to help, unable to do anything except survive minute by minute. Sergeant William Davies, the Lancaster's wireless operator, managed to get the dinghy inflated and 3 other crew members aboard before the bomber sank completely. The pilot, Flight Lieutenant Robert Matthews, the navigator, Pilot Officer James Peterson, and the bomb aimer, Sergeant Charles Wright. 4 men out of 7. The others, the flight engineer, mid-upper gunner, and rear gunner, they went down with the aircraft, trapped in wreckage or knocked unconscious during impact, lost before anyone could reach them. Davies takes charge in the dinghy, his training activating despite shock and grief. First priority is survival. Get everyone as warm as possible, assess injuries, ration supplies. Matthews has a broken arm, bone visible through torn flight suit, bleeding heavily. Peterson has head trauma, confused, drifting in and out of consciousness. Wright seems physically intact but psychologically shattered, staring at nothing, unresponsive to questions. Davies himself has cracked ribs, breathing painful, but he's the most functional, the one capable of making decisions. He applies first aid to Matthew's arm, uses strips torn from his own shirt as bandages, improvises a splint from pieces of floating wreckage. The bleeding slows but doesn't stop completely. Without proper medical care, infection is inevitable. But infection is a future problem. Right now, hypothermia is the immediate threat. Channel water is 50 degrees, cold enough to kill in hours. They're soaked, their clothing waterlogged, wind chill accelerating heat loss. They huddle together under the dinghy's canvas cover, sharing body heat, trying to stay alive long enough for rescue. Davies fires a flare after 2 hours, a calculated gamble. It's early, maybe too early, but Matthews needs medical attention urgently. If rescue doesn't come soon, he'll die from blood loss and shock. The flare arcs upward, burns bright against gray sky, hangs for long seconds, dies. No response. The ocean remains empty. Davies marks the time, decides to wait 4 hours before firing another. They have 2 flares left. 2 chances. After that, they're out of options. Morrison's Hudson is 70 miles away when Davies fires that flare, too far to see it, too far to respond. The aircraft that might have spotted it, a Coastal Patrol Spitfire, is dealing with its own emergency, an engine malfunction forcing it to abort patrol and return to base immediately. The flare burns unseen, wasted, another invisible signal shouting into emptiness. This is the cruel lottery of survival. Timing, location, luck, all of it has to align perfectly or rescue fails. Davies doesn't know his flare was missed. He just knows no one came. He'll wait, conserve the remaining flares, hope for better luck next time. The search continues through afternoon into evening. Morrison's Hudson runs low on fuel, must return to base. Another aircraft takes over, maintaining aerial coverage. Crawford's Fairmile keeps searching despite worsening weather, waves breaking over the bow, the boat taking punishment in heavy seas. The crew is exhausted, cold, soaked, but they don't quit. Somewhere out there, men are dying. That's all that matters. Keep searching. Keep trying. Don't abandon them. Harper, back in Dover, faces increasing pressure to call off the search. Night is approaching, visibility will drop to 0, continuing in darkness is dangerous for the rescuers themselves. The probability of finding survivors after this many hours is minimal. The cost-benefit analysis says suspend operations, resume at first light if weather permits. But Harper knows what suspending means. It means accepting that these men will die during the night, that they'll freeze or drown in darkness while rescue forces stand down. He can't accept that. Not yet. Not while any chance remains. He compromises. Aerial search will suspend at nightfall, aircraft can't search effectively in darkness. But the Fairmile will continue, Crawford and his crew will keep looking through the night, will maintain presence in the search area, will be there if flares are fired, if survivors can signal their position. It's not ideal. It's probably futile. But it's something. It's the refusal to completely abandon hope. That refusal is what defines Coastal Command, what separates them from cold military logic that writes off losses too quickly. Hours pass. No contact. The Fairmile arrives in the search area, joins the hunt, adds surface perspective to aerial overview. Crawford coordinates with Morrison by radio, dividing responsibility, ensuring complete coverage. But Crawford receives the order to continue searching through darkness. His crew doesn't complain. They're volunteers, all of them, men who chose air-sea rescue specifically because they wanted to save lives, because they couldn't stand the thought of airmen dying at sea while rescue forces did nothing. They'll search all night if necessary, will push themselves and their boat to limits, will accept the risks because that's what they signed up for. Night falls. The channel becomes absolutely black, no moon, no stars, just darkness and sound. Wind, waves, the Fairmile's engines, occasional radio traffic. Crawford reduces speed, mindful of floating debris, navigating carefully through invisible dangers. His crew maintains lookout despite near-zero visibility, watching for flares, for lights, for any indication of survivors. Hours pass in darkness, cold, exhaustion. The probability of success approaches zero. But they keep going. In the dinghy, Davies and his crew are failing. Matthews has stopped responding, his pulse weak, his breathing shallow. Peterson's head trauma is worsening, he's having seizures, his body convulsing uncontrollably. Wright remains catatonic, staring into darkness, unreachable. Davies himself is hypothermic, his thoughts confused, his speech slurred. He knows they're dying. He knows rescue probably won't come. But he can't give up. Not while consciousness remains. Not while any chance exists. He decides to fire another flare. It's dark now, visibility for flares is actually better at night, the bright light more visible against darkness. If anyone is searching, if any boat is near, this is their best chance. He retrieves the flare pistol with numb fingers, fumbles with the loading mechanism, nearly drops it overboard. Finally gets it loaded, aims skyward, pulls trigger. The flare ignites, shoots upward, bursts into brilliant red light suspended against absolute darkness. Crawford sees it. 5 miles away, a red star burning in the night, unmistakable, impossible to miss. He alters course immediately, steers toward the flare's location, calls his crew to action stations. This is it. After 12 hours of searching, after covering hundreds of square miles of ocean, after refusing to quit despite terrible odds, they've found them. Or found someone. Could be the Lancaster crew. Could be another downed aircraft. Could be anything. But it's survivors signaling for help, and Crawford will reach them. The Fairmile speeds through darkness, Crawford pushing the engines, accepting risk of collision with debris, focused entirely on reaching that position before he loses it. The flare dies after 2 minutes, but he marked the bearing, estimated the range, has rough coordinates. He slows as he approaches, begins systematic search of the immediate area, his crew scanning with searchlights, calling out into darkness. They find the dinghy 10 minutes later, small yellow raft bobbing in heavy seas, for men inside barely moving. Crawford brings the Fairmile alongside carefully, his crew securing the dinghy, reaching down to lift survivors aboard. The men are hypothermic, injured, semi-conscious. Matthews is critical, his pulse barely detectable. Peterson is seizing. Wright is unresponsive. Davies is conscious but confused, unable to speak coherently. The Fairmile's crew works with practiced efficiency, lifting survivors aboard, stripping wet clothing, wrapping them in blankets, beginning first aid. They have medical supplies, warm drinks, heating equipment. It's not hospital care, but it's enough to stabilize, to prevent further deterioration, to keep men alive during the return to Dover. Crawford sets course for home, pushing maximum speed, racing against hypothermia and trauma, trying to get these men to proper medical care before it's too late. The radio operator transmits success message. Survivors found, 4 men recovered, medical emergencies, require ambulances on arrival. Harper receives the message in Dover with profound relief. They did it. Against terrible odds, in awful conditions, after 12 hours of searching, they found them. 4 men saved. 3 lost, gone down with the aircraft, but 4 saved. The mathematics of tragedy and triumph, measured in individual lives preserved. The Fairmile arrives in Dover 2 hours later. Ambulances wait at the dock, medical personnel ready. The survivors are transferred quickly, rushed to hospital, treated for hypothermia, injuries, exposure. Matthews undergoes emergency surgery for his arm, the damaged bone set, infection prevented through antibiotics. Peterson receives treatment for head trauma, his condition stabilizes. Wright is treated for severe psychological shock, requiring extended psychiatric care. Davies recovers relatively quickly, his physical injuries minor, his psychological state strong enough to process the trauma without breaking. 3 days later, Harper visits them in hospital. He wants to understand what happened, to debrief the operation, to learn from this rescue for application to future searches. But mainly, he wants to see them alive, to confirm that the effort was justified, that 12 hours of searching in terrible conditions produced tangible result measured in preserved human lives. Davies is the only one capable of coherent conversation. The others are still recovering, too injured or traumatized to discuss the experience. Davies describes the ditching, the desperate escape from sinking aircraft, the loss of 3 crewmates, the hours in the dinghy waiting for rescue that might never come. He thanks Harper, thanks Crawford, thanks everyone involved in the search. His voice breaks when he talks about the flare, about firing it into darkness with no certainty anyone would see, about the miracle of the Fairmile appearing from nowhere, about being pulled from water minutes before death claimed him. Harper listens quietly. He's heard similar stories before, testimonies from other rescued airmen, accounts of survival against impossible odds. Each story reinforces his conviction that the work matters, that air-sea rescue is essential, that no effort is too great when human lives hang in balance. The war produces endless tragedy, countless deaths, overwhelming loss. But here, in this hospital room, are 4 men who should be dead but aren't. That's worth celebrating. That's worth the resources expended, the risks taken, the stubborn refusal to accept loss. He asks Davies about the timing of the flare, why he waited until darkness to fire the second one. Davies explains his reasoning, the calculation that nighttime visibility for flares is better, that their chances improved after sunset despite worsening conditions. Harper makes note of this, adds it to the accumulated knowledge of rescue operations, the small tactical lessons that improve future success rates. Every rescue teaches something, provides data, refines procedures. The institutional learning curve is built on individual experiences, on survivors explaining what worked and what didn't. Davies asks about the 3 crewmates lost, whether any chance exists they survived separately, perhaps in another dinghy. Harper shakes his head gently. The aerial search found no other survivors, no additional dinghies, no evidence anyone else escaped the Lancaster. The 3 men went down with the aircraft, died on impact or drowned during sinking. Their bodies won't be recovered. The Channel keeps them now, adds them to its collection of war dead, sailors and airmen claimed by cold water and preserved in dark depths. This knowledge devastates Davies. He survived while friends died. He's alive because of timing, position, luck. The randomness of survival creates guilt, the feeling that living when others died is somehow wrong, that fate made cruel arbitrary choices and he benefited while friends suffered. Harper recognizes survivors' guilt immediately, has seen it in other rescued airmen, knows its normal response to traumatic survival. He offers what comfort he can, reminds Davies that survival isn't betrayal, that the dead wouldn't want the living to suffer guilt, that honoring fallen comrades means living well and remembering. But words provide limited comfort. Davies will carry the guilt, will process the trauma, will eventually integrate the experience into his life story. Some rescued airmen return to operations quickly, eager to continue fighting. Others can't, their nerves broken, their capacity for courage exhausted. Davies doesn't know yet which category he'll fall into. Right now, he's just grateful to be alive, to have warmth and food and medical care, to have a future that extends beyond the next wave. Harper leaves the hospital, returns to headquarters, files his report on the operation. Successful rescue, 4 survivors recovered, 3 lost. Standard outcome for Channel ditchings, actually above average success rate. The resources expended were significant but justified by results. The procedures worked, the coordination functioned, the refusal to quit produced tangible benefit. He recommends commendations for Crawford and his crew, for Morrison and the aerial search crews, for Matthews the radar operator who maintained tracking through extended shift. Everyone performed well. The system worked as designed. But Harper also notes areas for improvement. The initial search took too long to locate survivors, partly due to poor weather but partly due to search pattern inefficiencies. Better coordination between aerial and surface units might reduce search time. Better flare protocols, informing survivors when to signal for maximum visibility, might improve location success. Small tactical refinements, minor procedural adjustments, incremental improvements that collectively enhance rescue probabilities. This is Harper's obsession, the endless pursuit of better methods, refined procedures, improved survival rates. He can't save everyone. The channel will always claim victims. But he can save some. And by learning from each operation, by refining techniques, by refusing to accept loss as inevitable, he can save slightly more. 1% improvement in rescue rates means dozens of additional lives saved over months of operations. Those small percentages represent real human beings, individuals with families and futures and incalculable value. Crawford and his crew received 3 days of leave after the operation, reward for extended duty in harsh conditions. They spend it resting, recovering, processing the experience. Rescue work is psychologically difficult in ways combat isn't. Combat has clear enemies, definable objectives, victory and defeat. Rescue has only partial successes and absolute failures, lives saved and lives lost, the knowledge that perfect execution still produces imperfect results because the sea is pitiless and survival depends on factors beyond human control. But they return to duty after leave, report back to the Fairmile, resume patrols and rescue operations. This is what they do. This is why they exist. The channel will claim more aircraft, more crews. Rescue forces will search, sometimes finding, mostly not. The mathematics of tragedy continue. But occasionally, against terrible odds, stubborn determined people pull other people from the sea and bring them home. The sea shall not have them. Not if Crawford has anything to say about it. Not if Harper keeps coordinating searches. Not if radar operators stay alert and aircraft crews search systematically and rescue boats refuse to quit. For men are alive because of this network of determination, this coordinated refusal to accept loss. They're in hospital beds instead of on the channel bottom. They have futures instead of graves. That's the mission. That's the meaning. That's why, despite exhaustion and danger and terrible odds, Coastal Command keeps searching, keeps rescuing, keeps insisting that every life matters enough to risk everything saving it. The sea shall not have them, Act 3. December 1944. The war grinds toward its conclusion, but the channel shows no mercy, no awareness of impending Allied victory. Aircraft still fall into gray water, crews still face the terrible mathematics of survival, rescue forces still search against impossible odds. For Coastal Command, the war's end changes nothing. Men are still dying at sea. That's all that matters. Squadron Leader Harper has been running air-sea rescue operations for 2 years now, long enough to see patterns, understand probabilities, recognize the cruel repetition of tragedy. He's coordinated hundreds of searches, saved dozens of airmen, lost hundreds more. The statistics weigh on him, numbers representing individual human beings who didn't come home, who died in cold water while rescue forces searched futilely. But he can't dwell on losses. The work continues. More aircraft will go down. More searches will launch. Some will succeed. Most won't. That's the reality he lives with. His operational procedures have evolved significantly since 1942. Better coordination between aerial and surface units, improved radar detection, refined search patterns, enhanced rescue equipment. The survival rate for downed airmen has increased measurably, small percentage improvements that translate to real lives saved. Harper tracks these statistics obsessively, analyzes every operation, implements lessons learned, pursues incremental refinements that collectively make difference between life and death for men floating in the channel. But some factors remain beyond his control. Weather, sea conditions, distance from shore, time of day, aircraft type, crew training, random chance. The variables are infinite, outcomes unpredictable. Two seemingly identical ditchings produce completely different results, one crew rescued within hours, another lost without trace. Harper has learned to accept uncertainty, to work within constraints, to maximize probability without expecting certainty. Every search is an attempt, not a guarantee. Success is never assured. Failure is always possible. But attempting is mandatory because not searching guarantees death. Lieutenant Crawford and his Fairmile crew have become the most experienced rescue unit in Coastal Command. They've pulled 43 airmen from the channel over 18 months, survived countless patrols in terrible conditions, developed intuition for where survivors might drift, how to search effectively, when to push beyond normal limits. They're exhausted, worn down by endless operations, but they can't stop. Won't stop. Each rescue validates their existence, confirms their purpose, makes the exhaustion and danger worthwhile. Crawford has changed during these 2 years. He was enthusiastic and optimistic in 1942, believing good intentions and hard work would save everyone. Experience has taught harder lessons. Most searches fail. Most downed airmen die. Rescue forces can't overcome physics, can't defeat the channel's infinite capacity for killing. But some searches succeed. Some men are saved. That possibility, however slim, justifies continued effort, validates the mission, makes the work meaningful despite frequent failure. His crew has changed too. They've seen things that haunt them, bodies floating in wreckage, men dying from hypothermia while being pulled aboard, survivors weeping over lost crewmates. They've experienced their own close calls, the Fairmile damaged by storms, nearly capsized by rogue waves, repeatedly pushed beyond safe operational limits in pursuit of survivors. They could request transfer to safer assignments. They don't. This work has meaning beyond personal safety. They're saving lives. Nothing else matters as much. December 15, 1944. A routine patrol becomes emergency response when operations calls with new ditching report. A Halifax bomber, returning from raid over Germany, multiple engine failure, ditched 35 miles northwest of Dover. 8 crew aboard. Mayday transmitted with coordinates. Weather conditions are marginally acceptable, seas moderate, visibility fair. Better than average rescue conditions. Harper mobilizes standard response, Crawford's Fairmile launches immediately, aerial search units scramble, the familiar machinery of rescue activates. But this search has complications. The coordinates provided in the Mayday are uncertain, the Halifax's navigator injured before transmission, position estimate potentially inaccurate by several miles. That uncertainty expands the search area significantly, reduces probability of quick location, increases time survivors spend in water. Every minute matters in channel rescue. Hypothermia progresses steadily, capability degrades, strength fails. Finding survivors quickly is essential. Searching large areas takes time. The tension between thoroughness and speed defines every operation. Crawford reaches the search area within 90 minutes, begins systematic search pattern. The aerial unit, a Hudson piloted by Flight Lieutenant Morrison, arrives simultaneously, begins coordinated search from altitude. They divide the expanded search zone into sectors, ensure complete coverage, communicate constantly by radio. This is textbook procedure, refined through dozens of operations, proven effective when conditions cooperate and survivors are findable. But 2 hours pass without contact. No dinghy sighted, no flares observed, no debris field located. The Halifax crew, if they survive ditching, should be visible by now. 8 men in emergency dinghies are substantial targets, hard to miss in moderate seas and fair visibility. The lack of contact is concerning. Possibly the ditching was catastrophic, the aircraft sinking before crew could escape. Possibly the crew abandoned over land, the Mayday position completely wrong. Possibly survivors drifted further than calculated, outside the current search area. Infinite possibilities, no clear answers. Harper, monitoring from Dover, expands the search zone, requests additional resources. Another Fairmile launches, more aerial units scramble, the operation scales up. But expansion brings diminishing returns. Larger search areas take longer to cover, reduce probability of finding anything, strain resources. There's always tension between comprehensive search and practical limits. How long to continue before accepting probable loss? How many resources to commit before acknowledging futility? These decisions torture Harper constantly. Quitting too soon might abandon living men. Continuing too long wastes resources needed for future rescues. The balance is impossible, the choice agonizing. 4 hours into the search, Morrison's Hudson detects unusual radar contact at extreme range, outside the defined search area. Could be debris, could be small boat, could be atmospheric anomaly. He alters course to investigate, flies toward the contact, visually searches the area. His observer spots something, floating debris definitely, possibly survivors. Morrison circles, confirms sighting, radios coordinates to Crawford. Contact established. Unknown if survivors present, but wreckage located. Worth investigating. Crawford alters course, speeds toward Morrison's position. The location is 15 miles northwest of predicted drift, far outside the initial search area. If survivors are there, they drifted faster and further than calculated, pushed by currents that modeling didn't predict. This happens sometimes, the channel's currents are complex and unpredictable, wind and tide interact in ways that simple calculations miss. It's why searches require flexibility, why rigid adherence to predicted search areas sometimes fails. Crawford reaches the debris field, begins searching through floating wreckage. Aircraft parts definitely, torn metal and shattered plexiglass and fragments of wing. The Halifax broke apart on impact, violent ditching that probably killed crew instantly or trapped them inside sinking aircraft. Crawford searches anyway, looking for bodies, for dinghies, for any evidence of survivors. His crew maintains silence, understanding the probability that this is recovery operation not rescue, that they're searching for the dead not the living. Then someone spots movement, a splash of color in gray debris. Yellow, the distinctive color of Mae West life vest. Crawford maneuvers closer, his crew reaching out with boat hooks, pulling debris aside, revealing a man floating face up, barely conscious, held above water by his inflated vest. They lift him aboard quickly, begin first aid immediately. He's alive but critically hypothermic, his core temperature dangerously low, his body shutting down. They strip his wet clothing, wrap him in blankets, force warm liquid down his throat. The survivor is Sergeant Michael Turner, Halifax's rear gunner, the only crew member who escaped before the aircraft sank. He's incoherent, unable to explain what happened, but his presence confirms the Halifax's fate. The ditching was catastrophic, the bomber broke apart on impact, sank within seconds. Turner, positioned in the rear turret, was thrown clear by the breakup, survived because his Mae West automatically inflated, found himself floating alone in debris field with his aircraft and crewmates already gone. He's been in the water nearly 5 hours, far longer than most men survive, alive through combination of good equipment, strong constitution, and sheer luck. 5 more minutes and he would have lost consciousness, slipped beneath the surface despite the life vest, drowned like his crewmates. The timing of Morrison's radar detection, Crawford's response, the successful search through debris, all of it aligned perfectly. One element different and Turner dies. This is the knife edge of survival, success and failure separated by minutes and meters and random chance. Crawford radios success, reports 1 survivor recovered, 7 presumed lost. He searches the debris field for another hour, looking for other survivors, for bodies, for anything. They find nothing else. The other 7 crew members went down with the Halifax, died on impact or drowned in sinking aircraft, their bodies trapped in wreckage or scattered by currents. The channel keeps them. Turner alone survived, random fate's arbitrary decision, survivor by luck not merit. The Fairmile returns to Dover with 1 living man and the knowledge of 7 dead. It's a success in technical terms, 1 life saved justifies the operation. But it feels like failure too, 7 losses overwhelming 1 salvation. Crawford and his crew process this paradox silently, the simultaneous relief of saving Turner and grief for the 7 they couldn't reach. Rescue work always carries this duality, triumph and tragedy inseparable, success measured against losses too large to fully comprehend. Turner spends 3 weeks in hospital, recovering from severe hypothermia and near drowning. He survives physically but carries psychological wounds that won't heal quickly. Survivor's guilt consumes him, the question of why he lived while friends died, what cosmic lottery decided his fate. He can't answer these questions. No one can. Survival at sea is random, determined by position and timing and equipment and chance. Understanding this intellectually doesn't ease emotional burden. Harper visits Turner after his physical recovery, conducts standard debrief, gathers information about the ditching for operational analysis. Turner describes the Halifax's final moments, multiple engine failures forcing emergency descent, the pilot attempting controlled ditching in heavy seas, the aircraft hitting water at wrong angle, the catastrophic breakup, the sensation of being thrown clear, surfacing alone in debris with aircraft already gone. The testimony is valuable for training purposes, illustrating dangers of high-speed ditching, confirming importance of proper technique. But mostly it's just tragic, another story of sudden death and random survival. Turner asks the question Harper hears repeatedly from rescued airmen. Why continue searching when most searches fail, when most downed crews die, when the odds are overwhelmingly against success? Why commit resources to missions that statistically produce minimal return? Harper's answer is always the same. Because every life saved matters infinitely to the person living it. Because accepting loss without attempting rescue is morally unacceptable. Because the small percentage of successful rescues justifies the large percentage of failures. Because they can't save everyone but they can save some, and some is infinitely better than none. Turner processes this answer silently. He's alive because people refuse to accept his death, because Morrison detected radar contact at extreme range, because Crawford searched through debris despite low probability of finding survivors, because random chance aligned in his favor. He owes his continued existence to institutional refusal to quit, to procedural thoroughness, to individual determination. The 7 crewmates lost didn't receive same fortune. They died because chance didn't align, because position and timing worked against them, because the sea claimed them before rescue could arrive. The unfairness is overwhelming. Turner will carry it forever. Harper has no comfort to offer beyond acknowledgement. Survival at sea is unfair, determined by factors beyond human control, producing outcomes that resist moral logic. Good people die while others live, not because they deserve different fates but because random chance distributes survival according to probabilities, not justice. Accepting this reality is part of surviving rescue, understanding that living when others died isn't betrayal, that gratitude for survival can coexist with grief for losses. January 1945. The war enters its final phase, Allied forces advancing into Germany, victory inevitable but still months away. The Channel remains dangerous, aircraft still fall, crews still face survival challenges. Coastal Command maintains operations at full intensity, understanding that war's end doesn't reduce responsibility to search, to rescue, to refuse abandonment of downed airmen. Harper receives orders transferring him to planning staff, promotion to wing commander, recognition of his 2 years managing air-sea rescue operations. He accepts the promotion but requests delay in transfer, wants to remain operational through war's conclusion, feels obligated to continue work he's been doing since 1942. His superiors agree to 3-month extension, allowing him to maintain command through the final intense period of combat operations. Crawford and his Fairmile crew continue their patrols, searching, rescuing, sometimes succeeding, often failing. They've saved 61 airmen now, pulled them from water that should have killed them, brought them home to futures they wouldn't otherwise have. But they've also searched for hundreds more without success, watched families receive casualty notifications, understood that their efforts, however determined, can't defeat the Channel's fundamental lethality. The psychological toll accumulates. Crawford has nightmares about searches that failed, men he couldn't reach, bodies floating in debris. His crew shows similar strain, exhaustion and trauma compounding with each operation. They need rest, need rotation to safer assignments, need time to process 2 years of continuous exposure to death and near death. But they won't request relief. Not while the war continues. Not while men are still falling into the channel. Rest can wait. The mission can't. February 1945. A Lancaster ditches 40 miles east of Dover, 7 crew aboard. Standard emergency, standard response. Crawford launches, aerial units scramble, the familiar procedure activates. But this search succeeds quickly, survivors located within 90 minutes, all 7 crew recovered alive and functional. Textbook operation, everything working perfectly, outcome validating all the procedures Harper developed and Crawford implemented. 7 men who should be dead are alive, saved by coordinated efficiency, by refined techniques, by institutional refusal to accept loss. This rescue, successful and complete, provides vindication Harper has been seeking. 2 years of operations, hundreds of searches, incremental improvements to procedures, all of it justified by results. The survival rate for channel ditchings has doubled since 1942, from approximately 15% to 30%. That improvement represents hundreds of additional lives saved, families kept whole, futures preserved. The work mattered. The obsessive pursuit of better methods, the refusal to accept loss as inevitable, the institutional commitment to rescue, all of it produced tangible benefit measured in human lives. Crawford and his crew celebrate this rescue quietly, understanding its significance not as isolated success but as validation of everything they've been doing. 7 men alive because procedures worked, because coordination functioned, because determination persisted. This is why they endure exhaustion and danger, why they keep searching despite frequent failure, why they refuse to quit. Moments like this, rescues that succeed completely, they justify all the failures, make the work meaningful, confirm the mission's value. March 1945. Harper's extension ends, his transfer to planning staff proceeds. He leaves operational command of Air Sea Rescue with mixed emotions, relief at escaping constant pressure but sadness at abandoning work that defined his war experience. He's saved lives, dozens of them, men who exist because of procedures he developed and resources he deployed. That legacy matters more than rank or recognition, provides satisfaction that promotion can't match. His replacement is younger officer, energetic and capable, inheriting refined system and experienced crews. The work will continue without Harper, rescue operations will maintain effectiveness, survivors will be pulled from the channel through application of procedures he helped develop. This continuity provides comfort, knowing that personal departure doesn't diminish institutional capability, that the mission persists independent of individuals. Crawford receives promotion to lieutenant commander, recognition of his extraordinary service record and rescue achievements. He considers requesting transfer to different assignment, escape from constant operational stress. But he can't abandon the Fairmile, can't leave the work unfinished, can't walk away while men are still drowning. He stays operational, maintains command of his rescue boat, continues the mission he's been running since 1942. April 1945. Germany collapses, Allied forces occupy the Reich, Hitler dies in Berlin bunker, surrender becomes inevitable. But the channel remains dangerous until the final day, German aircraft still operating from Norwegian bases, Allied bombers still flying final missions. Coastal Command maintains rescue operations at full capacity, understanding that last casualties of war deserve same effort as first, that timing of death doesn't reduce obligation to search. May 8, 1945. Victory in Europe. The war ends officially, combat operations cease, Allied forces celebrate victory. Coastal Command stands down from combat-related rescue operations but continues supporting peacetime aviation, searching for lost aircraft, assisting distressed boats, maintaining capability developed during war years. The mission evolved but doesn't end. The channel remains dangerous. People still need rescuing. The work continues. Crawford and his crew received demobilization orders, honorable discharge after years of continuous service. They separate from the Fairmile reluctantly, understanding their war is over but feeling incomplete, knowing more rescues will happen without them, that other crews will pull survivors from water while they return to civilian life. The transition is difficult, moving from wartime urgency to peacetime normalcy, from work with existential meaning to ordinary civilian existence. Years pass. Decades. Crawford returns to pre-war occupation as teacher, builds family, lives quiet productive life. But he never forgets the Fairmile, the searches, the rescues. He stays connected to other crew members, maintains relationships forged through shared danger and common purpose. They meet occasionally, aging men gathering to remember youth spent rescuing strangers from cold water, recounting searches that succeeded and failures that haunt them still. Harper rises through RAF ranks, eventually reaching Air Vice Marshal before retirement. He writes extensively about air-sea rescue operations, publishes analysis of wartime procedures, contributes to development of peacetime rescue services. His legacy lives in improved survival rates, refined techniques, institutional knowledge that continues saving lives decades after his operational service ended. Turner, the Halifax rear gunner pulled from debris field, survives the war and lives until 1998, 53 years beyond the day he should have died in the Channel. He carries survivors' guilt throughout his life but also profound gratitude, understanding that his existence represents human determination to save life, institutional refusal to abandon the drowning, individual courage of people who searched when searching seemed futile. The statistics are preserved in Coastal Command archives, numbers documenting success and failure across war years. Approximately 4,000 aircraft ditched in the Channel between 1939 and 1945. Roughly 15,000 airmen aboard those aircraft. 5,000 rescued, 10,000 lost. The survival rate, 33% overall, represents thousands of hours searching, countless patrols in terrible conditions, determined refusal to accept loss as inevitable. Every rescued airman represents successful search, coordinated response, procedures that functioned, people who refused to quit. Every loss represents failed search despite maximum effort, seas too rough, timing too slow, distance too far, random chance working against survival. The success is justified continuing effort. The failures haunted everyone involved. Both are preserved in memory and record, testament to what was attempted and what was achieved. The sea did have them, most of them, claimed by cold water and preserved in dark depths. But not all. Some were pulled from the Channel and brought home, saved by people who believed every life worth risking everything to save, by institutional commitment that persisted despite terrible odds, by individual courage that refused to accept death as inevitable outcome of ditching at sea. That refusal, that determination, that stubborn insistence that the sea shall not have them, it defined Coastal Command's mission and legacy. They couldn't save everyone. Most searches failed. Most downed crews died. But some lived, pulled from water by people who wouldn't quit searching, wouldn't accept loss, wouldn't abandon the drowning. Those survivors, those 5,000 men who shouldn't have lived but did, they represent what's possible when human determination confronts natural lethality and refuses to surrender. The Channel remains today, cold and gray and dangerous, indifferent to human stories played out on its surface. But it doesn't have everyone. Some escaped its grip, rescued by people who believe that every life matters, that attempting rescue justifies risk, that failure doesn't eliminate obligation to try. That belief, tested through thousands of searches and validated through thousands of lives saved, represents Coastal Command's enduring legacy. The sea shall not have them. Not all of them. Not if human will has anything to say about it.